Sometimes putting boundaries in place may be challenging, but they're so important to make sure you are meeting your own personal needs. It's Self-Care Saturday on BNC, and Dr. Charmaine Jackman shows us how setting boundaries is key to protecting our mental and emotional health. Dr. Jackman, thank you so much for joining us again for Self-Care Saturday. It's always good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here as well.
And Dr. Jackman, we talked about this before. We're wrapping up Mental Health Awareness Month. It's the last week of May, and we've learned so much about managing stress and dealing with anxiety. But what about setting boundaries? How does setting boundaries impact your mental health?
Brittany, it's such a wonderful question. You know, the way that we set boundaries and create limits for ourselves and communicate our needs to other people is such an important part of our emotional well-being, right? So I think setting limits includes knowing our limits, right? So knowing yourself, knowing what your needs are, being willing and able to ask for those needs, and putting yourself first. I think that can be really hard for people to hear sometimes, to put themselves first, because they're often in a caretaking role. But putting yourself first, knowing your limits and communicating your needs actually helps you stay with a positive mood, right? You're not going to be irritable with people when they break those boundaries. So it's such an important part in our emotional well-being and how we function as human beings.
And how does it kind of interrupt your peace of mind when you don't have those boundaries in place and people are allowed to kind of do things to you that may just throw you off mentally?
Yeah, so sometimes when we don't communicate our needs to people, or we operate outside of those limits, it can be really hard for our functioning to be disrupted, right? So for example, I take myself as an example, I need probably about 6 to 7 hours to function well. If I don't have enough sleep, then I tend to be more irritable. I tend to eat unhealthy. I tend to do things that then impact my mood and how I function and how I communicate with others. So if we're not setting those boundaries or operating within our limits, it can really impact how we function. It can impact our mood and impact how satisfied we are with our life or with that day.
And so how do we go about setting those boundaries when you talk about, whether it's, I'm not going to hang around a bunch of people at one time, or I'm going to take these days to have more of a self-care day? What do people need to do to kind of put those in place?
Yeah, I think sometimes people really feel that, what I've noticed, people tend to put other people first. And so they're taking care of other people's needs because they don't want to offend someone, they don't want to make someone angry. But when you operate like that, then you're neglecting your needs, and then people can become resentful. I have seen people, when they neglect their own needs, they become resentful for other people for breaking boundaries that they hadn't really set in the first place. So it's really important to communicate with people, whether it's about going out and hanging out, like if you want to hang with your friends, to say, I'm willing to hang out with you, but only if we limit it to this amount of people, right? If it goes beyond that, then I'm going to feel more anxious. I'm not going to feel comfortable. So, but you have to know again what your limits are first, and then you have to be comfortable to say with people, this is what I can tolerate.
Yeah.
And to communicate if they have broken those boundaries or limits, to let them know that they've gone beyond the line. Those can be really hard conversations to have, but practicing and again knowing that what you need and what you need to function or to feel well, putting that first, can really help you have those conversations with the people in your life.
And so do you need to go through and probably write like a list or something like that? Like, these are the things that I need to put in place to help me feel like I'm in a good mental state?
Thank you so much. That is such a wonderful observation. And yes, we often don't take the time to reflect on our patterns, on the things that we need. So you can do that through journaling. You can talk to a therapist around that. There are lots of journals out there that can help you, prompt you on things that you might need to know, like what are the things that help me be my best self. And it's really about that. And once you know that, then it's going to be easy to set boundaries with the people in your life.
So Dr. Jackman, what about when you don't set those boundaries, that it causes you to kind of get anxious a bit? Does that impact your level of anxiety?
Yeah, for some people it can, right? Because when you don't have clear boundaries, it means that people will cross those boundaries without your permission. It's almost, think about like having a fence around your house, right? When you have a fence, people know that that's a no pass zone. But if your home, there's no boundary, there's no fence, then people will come and go, and that can lead you to feeling anxious. It can lead you to feel really angry and irritable with people because they've violated parts of your personal space, your emotional space. They may talk to you in ways that you don't like, right? And that can definitely create a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger. But part of it is really for us to be able to, again, know ourselves and then set those clear boundaries with people. And then that's clear for you and for them. When they've crossed the line, you can say, hey, I set this boundary and you crossed the line, and that doesn't feel good for me. And if you're going to continue to be friends or whatever, family members, right? Whoever that person is in your life, a partner, then if you can't respect those boundaries, then I may have to reevaluate our relationship.
And lastly, with this being the final week in May of Mental Health Awareness Week, what's your final self-care and mental health tip for the week?
So we've shared lots of tips this week, and I think it's really important. We talked a lot about, assessing your stress, checking in with yourself. And I think the action step that I love people to do is to put you on the calendar. So schedule some time for you, and that part of it might be spend some time journaling, reflecting, doing something that brings you joy. But I want you to put you on the calendar.
I love that. I am making sure that I do that this week because I am going on vacation. Well, Dr. Jackman, thank you so much for joining us for Self-Care Saturday. Again, we always appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Have a great vacation.
Thank you.